Good evening. Welcome to Headwaters. Tonight's show is the Old Time Country Radio Reunion featuring performers from the days of the live country music radio shows in an event held each year in Jonesboro, Tennessee. We hope you'll enjoy it.
The idea behind the Old Time Country Radio Reunion was to bring together as many people as we could find who had been involved at some point in their career in live broadcasting of country music in the Upper East Tennessee area. I think the real source of this old-time country radio reunion came from the fact that when I moved down here, I met people like Tom Slagle and Vestal Jackson and Will Keyes and Ivan Powell, who had played on some of the stations in this area back in the 30s and 40s and 50s, and it was really through them and hearing them talk about the old days and meeting some of the people that they had been associated with that really started me thinking, that would be a good thing, to try and bring some of these people together.
Thank you. That was good.
Here we are at the afternoon session here at the third annual Old Time Country Radio Reunion. We're going to be playing it kind of loose and easy this afternoon, bringing up various people who have played on country radio here in the Tri-Cities, talking with them and listening to some of their good music. And now, I just heard a familiar chord, and I just realized it's time to bring up one of the MCs of the Old Barrel of Fun, East Tennessee's most popular program of folk and country music, led off by none other than George Simmerly.
Roll out the barrel, we'll have the barrel of fun. Roll out the barrel, we've got the blues on the run. Sing, boo, to rider, ring out a song of good cheer. Now's the time to roll the barrel, 'cause the game's all here. Yes, sir, roll out the barrel. Well, we used to do it every Saturday morning from the stage of the Barricade Theater in Elizabethton. Yes, sir, we used to roll it out. Let me see the hands of those of you who ever heard the Barrel of Fun. Let's see if we have... well, we've got a few people here old enough to remember that old program. Right here's one that I used to sing on that program. It's in the key of A, boys. And I hope you'll enjoy my singing once again of a tune that goes something like this. Now listen while I tell you of a place I know, down in Tennessee where the tall corn grows, hidden from the world in a bunch of pine, where the moon's a little bashful and it seldom shines. Civilized people live there alright, but they all go native on Saturday night. Oh, swing it, boy!
The way in which these shows were set up is that you had an announcer who is also a stage manager, and they get together with the musicians before the show, and they would script them out in greater or lesser detail.
Well, the music is a fiddle and a flat guitar. They get the kick from an old fruit jar. They do the boogie to an old square dance. Well, the woods are full of couples looking for a man. They struggle and they struggle till broad daylight. Oh, they all go native on Saturday night. When they really get together, there's a lot of fun. They all know the other fella packed the gun. Everybody does his best to act just right, cause there's going to be a funeral if you start a fight. Somebody takes your programs and knocks out the lights, so they all go native on Saturday night. Pick it out again.
You're operating under tremendous pressure. You've got to get those musicians on, you've got to get them off, and of course, you know, back in the old days too, you had to make sure that the sponsors got their fair share too, and the announcer really was kind of like a ringmaster in a circus.
And now you've heard the story of a place I know, down in Tennessee where the talk goes, hidden from the world in a bunch of pine, where the moon's a little bashful and it seldom shines. Civilized people live there alright, but they all go native on a Saturday night.
Hey, that's just fine. Hey.
They would have the bands do singing commercials for their advertisers, and leaders of bands taking part in doing advertising spiels, and they would clock the time very accurately and, you know, play the songs and make sure that they were on the schedule.
I believe you folks are out here because you like the good old-time country and bluegrass. Am I right? Come on! All right, I'll tell you what. Now, you've heard a lot of good harmonica players right up to Charlie McCoy, of course, who's great. Well, Wayne Rainey, Lonnie Glosson, my hundreds of others. But here's one of the first ones that I ever heard play, my own brother. And he was playing on the radio in 1933. This is called Give Mother My Crown. She labored so hard in this world below. She didn't have things most women know. Raising her children on a widow's small pay, washing and ironing since Dad passed away. I want to go to heaven when this life is o'er. I want to be with Jesus on eternity's shore. But if I've a crown coming when rewards go around, please, blessed Jesus, give Mother my crown. When I was a lad, just how great a burden my mother had. the right way to go. I want to go to heaven when this life is o'er. I want to be with Jesus on eternity's shore. But if I've a crown coming when rewards go around, please, blessed Jesus, give Mother my crown. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Let's make him welcome Fiddlin' Ralph Mayo, ladies and gentlemen.
The first year that we did it, we didn't do any actual broadcasting per se. We were recording all of this stuff, the music and the reminiscing, but none of it was actually going out over the air. But they got to talking with people at Tri-Cities Broadcasting, WJCW and WQUT-FM, about doing live broadcasts of portions of these shows, and that really opened up something for us, which I think was very valuable. You know, simply having the access to the radio and not just talking about the old days, but actually recreating what those old barn dance shows were like.
Wait for the sunrise. All right. All right there, man. When you go to church on Sunday and you leave the Savior out, you'll feel like you're alone when they all begin to shout. When you get old-time religion, you'll want the world to know. You won't have to ask nobody. You can feel it in your soul. You can feel it in your soul. You want the world to know. You won't have to ask nobody. You can feel it in your soul. Some people ask their neighbors about the way of sin and what they have to do for Christ to live within. But let me tell you, brother, there's one thing you should know. You won't have to ask your neighbor. You can feel it in your soul. You can feel it in your soul. You want the world to know. You won't have to ask your neighbor. You can feel it in your soul. When you have that kind of religion and you don't know what to do, you better pick up your Bible and read the pages through. He'll tell you in His Word the things you ought to know. You won't have to ask nobody. You can feel it in your soul. You can feel it in your soul. You want the world to know. You won't have to ask nobody. You can feel it in your soul.
Thanks a lot.
Learning about the history of country music, it became clear to me that this particular part of Tennessee had been very important in the early days, really from the late 20s right through the 50s. In the first real important commercial recordings of country music, such as the debuts of the Carter family and Jimmy Rogers in Bristol, and then of course that whole explosion of bluegrass that was being disseminated out of Bristol on WCYB. All of that was very interesting to me, and I really wanted to be able to come down here and meet some of those people and talk with them and find out more about it. As far as the audience was concerned, there's a chance for the older people to, once again, have a chance to see people that they had grown up listening to, and for younger people to get an idea of how the music had grown and developed and changed. We really did have quite a range of performers, too, like George Simmerly and Dr. Jim Sizemore and Tom Slagle, Vestal Jackson, Ralph Mayo, the Bales Brothers, Reese Shipley. We got to see everything from the very oldest of the old-time string band music through country music styles of the 30s and hardcore old-time bluegrass and all the way up to progressive bluegrass and country. And it was a real kind of spectrum of the development of country music. And the fact that this was also being broadcast on commercial radio, I think, was an important thing, because it was doing something very unusual for this day and time.
Tim Cole, You Can Have Her goes like this right here. See y'all tomorrow night.
You can have her, I don't want her. She didn't love me anyway. She only wanted someone to play with. But all I wanted was love to stay. The girl I love, she up and left me. She ran away from my best friend. But she comes home just 1 hour. But come daylight, she's gone again. You can have her, I don't want her. She didn't love me anyway. She only wanted someone to play with. All I wanted was love to stay. Wiley Cox on mandolin, all right. Well, if you get their own woman, there's only one thing you can do. What's that? Just dig a hole, jump right in it.
only wanted someone to play with. All I wanted was love to stay. And Diddy Friday on the 5 string. Keep them hands going. Here we go. Well, you can have her. I don't want her. She didn't love me anyway. She only wanted someone to play with. All I wanted was love to stay. But all I wanted was love to stay. Thank y'all.
Lord have mercy. Thank you, boys. That's the Fridays. George Simmerly has come up again this year all the way from Fort Walton Beach, Florida, but that isn't originally where you're from. Where are you from originally, George?
I'm from Valley Forge. I started in radio at WOPI. You know, that was the first radio station in this area. They came to Johnson City, had a supplementary studio in the John Sevier Hotel, and I did my first song on the radio. It was the Big Rock Candy Mountain. Then I'd go to Bristol on Saturday night. We had a jamboree over there. Tennessee Ernie was just one of the boys then. He worked around the radio station there. His dad worked in the post office. The Carter family, they'd come and appeared on this program and many others. And then later, they opened this radio station in Johnson City, WJHL. And then they had a supplementary studio in Elizabethton, and they started the Barrel of Fun. It was a studio program originally, and then later we moved it in on the stage of the Bonnicate Theater. Turtle Talbert left. He was the radio announcer, and he went to Florida, and then I started emceeing it. I emceed it for several years, for about 10 years, and I went in the service. I was in special service as an entertainer during the war. I wrote a little tune during that time. This tune put me in special services. They used to sing it on the Grand Ole Opry. It's going to take you way back there to World War II times. It's in the key of A, and it goes like this. Oh, why does my daddy have to leave me? Why does my daddy have to go? Please tell me why the army needs my daddy when Mama and I, we need him so. Last night as I was
I think one of the reasons why this kind of format died out is because of the amount of time and energy in the personnel who had to be involved in putting on these shows. It just became a lot simpler to have a playlist and a bunch of records and put these on and run your ad copy. And it's really like a mechanization, catching up with the radio business is a lot of what caused these things to die out. They're just complicated to do and do them well.
Please tell me why the army needs my daddy when Mama and I, we need him so.
I think one of the reasons why this radio reunion, was responded to as enthusiastically as it was by performers in the area has to do with, I think, a kind of resurgence of interest and pride. I think that it really has been developing in this area since the early 70s and has been building up, and people felt that it was in a way long overdue, for attention to be given to their music and the stations in this area.
Righto. You want me to kick that off, Ivan?
Come on, Jack, get on the stage.
of the audience came up to me and said, "I feel like I'm sitting in the middle of history." And there's a drummer in this Western swing band that was led by Reese Shipley, and he said essentially the same thing. He said, "This is really something else." He said, "You have the whole range here. You know, I mean, all you have to do is sit here and listen to what's going on and look at these people and hear them talk, and you have a real capsule history of the roots of country music and where it's been and where it is now and where it's going, right here in one spot." And people out there were appreciating the effort that we were going to pay some attention to the musicians of the area and the contribution that this area has made to country music. And I hope it has set some kind of precedent that will maybe encourage, more people to try to break away, from this kind of Nashville-dominated radio format that we see, and give the local musicians more of a break, more of an opportunity to be heard.
Thank you for joining us for Headwaters. Next week's show is The War Within, a program dealing with the problems of returned Vietnam veterans living in the Appalachian region. We welcome your comments and your suggestions, and you can write to us at Headwaters, Box 743, Whitesburg, Kentucky, 41858. Headwaters is supported in part by a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts.
This is a test. Testing sound and visual quality of deck number 2.
So who are you going to videotape?
We're going to videotape the students.
Gosh, I don't really know. I think part of it is that, you know, I was thinking about all of this, and also we just bought a house.
Point the mic a little bit more at him, and then I can see it. There you go.
Where's the house?
The corner of Cherokee and Maple.
Here in town?
Yeah.
Oh, no more Sulphur Springs?
No, not. And we're going to probably move out here in the middle of August. Time that you do it, you know, there's a kind of initial period in which you kind of have the sense of something kind of phony going on, you know, but it seems to me that if you're going to train people to go out and do this kind of thing with people, that you got to find, you know, what kind of techniques really can create that experience, you know, so that they have some idea of what they, you know, will be subjecting other people to. I think that's part of it as well. Anyhow, let me put this thing on. This is a tape that I did in 1973 with one of my neighbors in Sulphur Springs. This is a man named George Payne, who was born in 1890. And we're going to be visiting him and his family on Sunday. And
how old does that make him?
Makes him 88.
Yeah.
And he was born and raised in Greene County, Tennessee, about 20 miles or so from Sulphur Springs, where he lives now. And he learned how to play the banjo when he was 6. Comes from a real old-time musical family. And I had known him for about a year before I went in and started doing videotaping with the family, mainly centering around him. And here he's playing a tune called Cold Creek March. And you can see I'm kind of looking at it from a very specialized viewpoint, that of a banjo picker. And, you know, this was really just about the first, I'd say just about the first video I'd ever shot. Well, after just kind of learning how to fool around with the quarter pack and then taking it over to their home and showing them how they work, we set up a session. They invited in some of the family and neighbors, and we recorded some of the music. And I was particularly interested in getting down some of Mr. Payne's performance techniques, you know, to get a close-up view of what he was doing. And really, I was kind of using the quarter pack as like an extension of an audio tape recorder, and I think that comes through in the way I handle the thing.
Where's Ellen from? What's it called? It's over here with the camera.
Anybody getting self-conscious?
I talked to CBS News in Cambodia.
Had a kind of interesting career. He was born and raised in a place called Minsk Gubernia, which is in Lithuania, part of the old Russian Empire, around 1882. And he got involved in some pretty heavy radical movement. I think we better get into what we're all about today. I think you may be wondering what we're doing here with these lights and these video recorders and these monitors. We've been talking about getting us out and getting some practical fieldwork experience, and this is going to kind of serve several purposes together, and I think I better explain what we've got in mind. I've been using videotape myself to collect folklore and also try and teach folklore collecting methods and anthropological collecting methods since about 1973. And I'm really impressed with some of the basic capabilities of this equipment as a tool for collecting information about people, getting some idea of what their lifestyle is like, and getting them also to respond. And the thing that, to me, about video that has really the kind of exciting potential is that it has an instant playback capacity. You can record something, and you can look at that thing, and you can see immediately what you've got. And you can set up the thing in such a way that you can do that when you're going out to visit someone. So you can show them themselves, and by showing themselves, let the person see themselves and hearing themselves, they can put input into that. They can respond to what you've shown them. And there's another thing about it too, that you can also do the same thing in a classroom situation. That we have, at relatively low expense, a kind of tool here that will let us go out into the field, bring stuff back into the classroom, look at it, and use it as a basis for developing ideas, for developing fieldwork projects and learning more about particular areas that we might be interested in, particular people. And what I'd like to do here, if we can, is kind of document a process that we're going to be involved in for the next several weeks, and that is introducing us to a practical fieldwork experience through the video medium. We are going to be using video in the field, but before we do that, we'd like to kind of get an idea of what it's like to try and communicate naturally in a situation where you're surrounded by media. Like you've really got this kind of basic problem involved in documenting cultural behavior. On one hand, you want to be as natural, as relaxed as possible, but on the other hand, you want to get as much and as comprehensive information as you can, which means bringing media into, what is basically a face-to-face interaction situation like what we've got now. Now, the thing is that takes getting used to. It takes getting acclimated. Not only does it take getting acclimated for the people that you're going to be doing this to, but you have to be comfortable with the equipment. You have to be comfortable using it. You also have to be comfortable being around it. And I think, if we say right now that all of us are completely natural and completely comfortable, I think, we're not really telling the truth to ourselves. Like, the thing is that all of us, have, ideas about what we look like, what our personalities are, and most of the time we're not too conscious of our mannerisms or idiosyncratic behavior. But when as we know, if you bring in a tape recorder or video equipment, something like that, you start creating a situation where you can get a little bit self-conscious. And what we really want to get at is, I guess, learning how to be comfortable with this equipment so that we can be comfortable when we go and see other people with it. And what we've specifically got lined up is to go and visit some people that I have worked with now for about 5 years. In fact, these would be the first people that I ever really shot any video with. I live out at a place called Sulphur Springs, which is about 15 miles outside of Johnson City, and in a place called Deal Hollow, and about a mile down the road from where I live is a family named the Paynes, and there's several generations of Paynes living in 3 houses that are all within shouting distance of each other. And when I first came to Sulphur Springs, I started asking if there were any old-time musicians around the neighborhood, and that, of course, has been a long-standing interest of mine. And I found out about Mr. George Payne, who we're going to be seeing here. Mr. George was born in 1890 in a place called Paint Creek in Greene County, which is right on the North Carolina line. And during the course of his life, he has mostly lived in Upper East Tennessee. For a very short period of time, he went up to around Cumberland Gap to try working in the coal mines and found he didn't like that life. He's been a logger. He's worked at the plant out in Elizabethton, the old Bonet plant. And for about the last 35 years, he's been a farmer, tobacco farmer, and truck gardener out at Sulphur Springs. And he learned how to play the banjo when he was 6 years old. The family was musical. He had a grandfather who he talks of as being a great old-time fiddler. His father was a great old-time fiddler. He has a number of brothers and sisters who play banjo and fiddle and guitar. And he, until recently, was a pretty fine step dancer. He had an operation about 1.5 years ago, but he can still buck dance and play the banjo a little bit. If you're interested in meeting people who are real old-time country people with a genuine Appalachian mountain background, I'd say these are awfully fine people to start with. And what I'd like to do is show you some of this videotape that I shot, and this will give you an introduction to the man and also start giving us some introduction to the way in which you can use videotape in a collecting situation, some of the kinds of considerations that are involved.
I want to ask a question.
Sure.
Okay, like before you start showing that, could you tell us, like, you know, how you went in and set up and all that, what equipment you used?
Sure. Okay, now as I said before, I knew these people, I think, for just about a little more than a year before I got access to video equipment and got the idea of doing a shoot with them. And what I did first was to go over one weekend. We'd been getting together pretty regularly to play music, and I brought over the Portapack, and I demonstrated the Portapack. I said, "Have you ever seen one of these things before?" And they hadn't. I hadn't either.
Does that include the screen and the tape deck and the lights and everything?
No, I didn't bring lights. I think I got to explain about that too. The equipment I had was a Portapack and AC adapter. That's that gray box over there, which you need. A smaller monitor than that with an RF unit. The RF unit is a module that plugs into the back of the Portapack, and it permits you to monitor while you're shooting. And I also had a 300-watt bulb, which I screwed into the ceiling fixture. I didn't bring in a light kit at all. Initially, what I was really after was not so much getting something that was you know, like a professional documentary quality, but trying to fit this thing into that environment and learning how to use it on the basis of skills I had, which were primarily doing interviews with audio tape. And I really saw the camera as kind of being an extension of an audio tape recorder. You know, it would be different if I think if I'd come into the thing from a film background or a commercial TV background. So that affected a lot of the way I approached the thing. And in recording this particular segment here, I had my Portapack sit on the floor and the monitor between myself and Mr. Payne facing me. so that I didn't have to look into that viewfinder. Now, if you look at what Ben is doing over there, you've got a fairly small viewfinder, and he's gunning down at us at eye level. Now, one thing I was concerned with is that in a normal kind of conversational situation, it's important to maintain normal eye contact patterns. Of course, the kind of eye contact and the kind of spatial relationships that you maintain to people, different from culture to culture. But the thing is that bringing a camera directly into a face-to-face interaction situation presents a person with a lens rather than two eyes. And I was interested in seeing if I couldn't minimize that. So I was using my monitor as to see what was going on. I had this big picture, and I had the camera plugged in there, and it was down in my lap, and I was handling the zoom and the focus like this. And I had my microphone, as you'll see, set up on the kitchen table, and Mr. Payne was sitting just about this far away from me. And we just started talking, and he was playing some of his old banjo tunes for me. And what I was mainly interested in this tape, this particular segment here, was getting some kind of audio-visual record, I should say, of Mr. Payne's banjo playing style, and see if I could get any information about how he learned, if there were any kinds of changes that took place, in his...
playing old-time style from 100 years ago, or...
Right.
Or a new...
and I mean, here was this kind of unique opportunity of someone who started to learn banjo before the turn of the century, to see what their style was, and maybe get some idea of how it evolved, to get an idea of the general development of banjo style in Upper East Tennessee anyway, which is a kind of limited but legitimate problem that a folklorist or an ethnomusicologist, might want to go after. So that's basically what I did. I was using that lap holding technique, and we're sitting in the kitchen.
Well, I mean, okay, like, you was looking at the monitor but trying to get them on the camera like that?
Right. Okay. And what I would do, is glance down. I could, like, put my, nod down to the monitor and then come back to Mr. Payne. And it was really, I was trying to see, how I, as myself as a single, field worker, could use this equipment most effectively in a situation where people had not been collected from, were kind of media shy, And I found that, through showing the people how the thing worked, showing themselves on the screen, that we could get acclimated, to the thing. The basic thing is it seemed to me, is to develop that relationship, that human relationship, and not let the technical concerns overpower what we're really after, which is developing a kind of quality, of intimacy between the interviewer and the informant, that will come through and give you something that has some degree of validity to it. Well, let me show you a little bit of this tape.
was, I went to one. And no, I have two banjos, and he's, yeah, well, of course, this gets into the thing about the variety of banjo styles, getting into that specifically. What he is doing is an index lead. He's picking up, and then he brushes down with his index finger and comes in with his thumb. And then to get melody, he brings his thumb in onto the inside strings. And this is pretty much the common style that you find among pre-bluegrass banjo players in Upper East Tennessee. And if you go in Upper East Tennessee and Western North Carolina, that is pretty much the characteristic old-time banjo style. Now, if you go up into Southwest Virginia, you get what they call a claw hammer. And there, the people are striking down, usually with the index finger. They wrap down, and then they come up with the thumb, and they wrap down again, and then they get their melody dropping the thumb. But that is pretty much distinctively an East Tennessee style, in Western North Carolina style. And you can kind of plot, you know, where people are from, or at least could in the old days, by the regional banjo style. But that wasn't the way he started out playing, and that was kind of what I was trying to get into. I wanted to see if I couldn't see from him some, you know, if he could reproduce how his original picking style and then what became of it and how it developed, to kind of get, as I said, a lead on general changes in the banjo style of the area. Let me go ahead and just play you a little bit more of that, because it talks about
yellow wound up here. Was that the kind of picking that you're doing now with bringing the sun in a lot like that? Was that the way the old timers picked? Yeah, but I like to pick it from the hand now. Have any special name for that style of picking you were doing just before? Yeah, they have the special for their hands, you know. They use their hands that way. Then after I got a pretty good sized boy, they got
some tapes of that too, where one of Mr. Payne's grandsons was running the camera and playing guitar. Yeah. Decent sound, it really pays not to use that camera mic. It's kind of low fidelity.
Yeah. You should have two people, one ride the levels.
Yeah, well, the way these things are set up, they've got automatic game controls, and there's automatic light level on the camera too, and that's good and bad because it'll grade down on you, and also well, there are situations in which it'd be nice to have be able to set the light levels and also to run a mixer, which you can do, run a mixer into the back. Bypass the automatic game control. That's more advanced level.
Somewhere in there.
Knocked it out on Mom.
No, I know what it was. It wasn't. It's that thing that, you know, where your tires on the back, and then there's that thing where the little gears are in the back. What's the name of that thing?
Go again.
Differential. Oh, you know where your back tires are, and there's this thing that goes like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what he was cutting that part out right there and using it for the banjo body down there.
I've heard people using brake rims. It's heavy, but they ring nice.
Quasimodo used to play one.
Quasimodo. Oh, Quasimodo.
All of them people like that.
Did you tell him ahead of time you're going to shoot?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess that's why he came in his coat and tie. I was interested in his brother and his coat and tie.
Well, yeah, I mean, everybody wants to present themselves, you know, according to the way they want to be seen, you know, in the best light. And of course, everybody's concept of that varies.
Doesn't that kind of interfere sometimes with what you're trying to get? Couldn't it?
Well, false image.
Yeah.
Well, is it a false image or isn't it? I mean,
It's not, because that's the way they think. So I don't think it'd be a false image.
I know, but there's really kind of interesting question there. You know, where is the cultural reality in the sense? You know.
I wouldn't want people to I would want them to be themselves. I wouldn't want them to be somebody else. You know, some of the people might think, well, hey, you know, I want to get dressed up and look, you know, really nice. But if they don't wear it everyday type thing, you know.
What was that?
He brought a cup of ice over and set it on the table.
No, get back to that.
But I just, you know, I would want them. I wouldn't want them to come in a coat and a tie.
Yeah, you'd want them to dress in their everyday.
Right, I wouldn't want them to be,
dress.
you know, I wouldn't want them to come out, you know, hey, I work in the fields with my, you know, my $50 shoes and my nice coat and tie, you know, silk shirt, the whole works. I don't think I'd like it. You know, I don't know how would you say, hey, don't come dressed up? Or what would you do?
I guess it would be like going to another country. You wouldn't want, if you went to Japan, you
I
wouldn't want to see
look
everybody in their kimonos just because you're there, because they don't wear kimonos all the time.
Yeah, but you know, that's the thing too about
everybody thinks they're supposed
about
to
this basic interaction we're talking about, getting, you know, the outsider, you know, in with the insiders, and like you've got expectations of them, they've got expectations of you. You know, both of you have got these mutual set of stereotypes and expectations, and what you want to what you want to do is kind of get into that situation and not completely alter it. You know, I mean.